Back in the early 17th century, when the Jesuit missionaries came to Beijing, they were amazed at how low the crime rate was compared to back home in Europe. There was a reason for this. China had developed a system of torture that frightened people into obeying the law. There was no real concept of defense. Once arrested, you were more or less condemned. A confession would be routinely extracted by torture, for example, hanging by thumbs, or kneeling on chains or crushing ankles. Your only real hope of acquittal would be the rapid intervention of influential family and friends. For most crimes in ancient China, the imperial official, the magistrate, stood in judgment at his yamen. Each town would have a yamen which contained living accommodations, prison cells, and a courtroom. There was no concept of arguing the case, and no jury system. Witnesses would give the evidence to the magistrate, who would then pronounce his verdict. There were 5 categories of punishment: light beating, heavy beating, servitude, exile, and death. Keep watching this video to learn about the horrifying ways of torture and punishment in the history of China. Death by 1,000 cuts. The brutality of the system shocked Western visitors. For the top crimes, the ultimate punishment was the ling chi, death by 1,000 cuts, or death by slow slicing. This gruesome punishment followed a prescribed order, starting with flaying off pieces of skin and muscles, and then removal of body parts in order to maximize pain but keep the vital organs functioning. It ranged from 8 to 120 cuts. Death by numerous cuts is a better translation. This punishment was reserved for high treason. For example, Zheng Jing and Hu Weiyong, as well as the killing of a father or husband. The duty to parents was so strong in China that killing a parent was punished particularly severely. It wasn't only the culprit who suffered. His house was demolished. His teacher would be executed, obviously a bad influence, as well as the local magistrate. Even the provincial governor would often be demoted. If a husband killed his wife, then the punishment was much less severe. Often only a severe beating, which reflected the much lower status of women in Imperial China. Legendary tortures. The tales of torture go back a long time in China. Perhaps the most evil reputation from early history is the story of Daji, the seducer of the last Shang dynasty, Emperor Di Jing, circa 1050 BCE. Daji was considered a fox demon. The emperor indulged her taste of the macabre. She's said to have wondered why a man could apparently walk over the frozen lake without apparent discomfort. So he had his feet cut off to investigate. She made similar gruesome investigations on pregnant women and how the heart functioned. She apparently liked to hear the screams of the tortured and devised the heated cauldron on which victims were tied, slowly baking them to death. As history was written in the Zhou dynasty that succeeded the Shang, such stories were probably circulated to discredit the last Shang loyalists. An equally distressing story of torture concerns China's only empress, Tang Empress Wu Zetian. Once again, the story may have been concocted to discredit the rule of the dangerous precedent of a female ruler. She managed to depose Tang Emperor Gaozong's empress, Wang Yuyan, and his favorite concubine, consort Zhao, 649 to 683. At first, she had them in prison, but when she believed the emperor became distressed at their treatment, she had their hands and feet chopped off. They were then left to briefly live on as pigs. Empress Wang's dying curse was to be reincarnated as a cat and come to the palace and rip out Wu Zetian's throat. Consequently, cats were banned from all the imperial palaces. Perhaps the acceptance of torture is in some way related to the belief in a Buddhist hell. Rather like the visions of hell dreamed up by Dante, hell was full of different punishments considered appropriate for each misdemeanor. King Yanyan Wanged is the god of death and ruler of hell who deals out the punishments. For example, someone who steals or defaces a good book is flayed alive, and someone who breaks up a marriage or engagement is impaled on spears. In Buddhism, a malefactor is punished in hell for a few years before rebirth as some kind of creature. Slow drip torture. Perhaps a better-known form of Chinese torture was the slow dripping of water onto the forehead with the body firmly strapped down. The incessant and regular dripping of water was a mental rather than physical torture. The victim never had any relief. If that wasn't enough, there were occasions when acid was occasionally also dripped that would painfully burn through the skin into the brain. This increased the terror, as the prisoner wouldn't know if the next drop would be water or acid. Branding with hot irons and the amputation of limbs, genitals, or the nose was widespread. Chopping off the nose without anesthetic was so common that it has its own character in the language, Yi. To ensure the extended family restrained all its members from criminal acts, severe punishments were meted out to the whole lot. In extreme cases, the whole male family would be executed, Li Zhu, grandfather, father, children, cousins, and grandchildren. The most severe punished all relations within 9 degrees of relationship, including uncles, aunts, and sisters-in-law. Family members under 16 years old and women would be spared but taken as slaves, so the whole family would effectively disappear from history. The worst example is probably from 1380, when Ming Emperor Hongwu charged Gu Weiyong with high treason. Not only was Hu's whole family slaughtered, but anyone remotely associated with it, resulting in well over 30,000 executions for one crime. Although it has to be said that this was probably more of a purge of possible dissidents rather than criminal punishment. Beatings and mobile stocks. The Chinese legal system had complex written rules with set punishments for all possible forms of crime, which numbered in the thousands. For petty crimes, it was common to put a wide wooden kang around the neck for weeks or months. This prevented the convicts from being able to feed themselves or even sleep comfortably. It quite often led to death. The kang had details of the crime pasted onto it for all to see. The weight of the kang was determined by the severity of the crime. This is rather similar to stocks that were used in Europe. Some were punished by forced labor, for example, pulling the royal barges on the Grand Canal for 3 years. However, most punishments were in the form of beatings with bamboo sticks. In the Yuan dynasty, this was codified as a light stick, 7 to 57 beatings in steps of 10, and a heavy stick, 67 to 107 beatings. Death was common after heavy beatings, often due to infection setting in through the ruptured skin. So a beating of 100 heavy blows was created as a death sentence. An appropriate bribe would normally be paid to lessen the force of the beatings, and there was even an official scale of charges that would allow richer prisoners to escape the punishment altogether. By the Qing dynasty, the number and severity of beatings were complex. For example, if someone had been hit, the punishment had a fixed scale according to the scale of injury caused. No obvious sign: bruise, broken skin, broken bones. Modern times. The Chinese system of torture came to an official end with the foundation of the Republic in 1912, but hints remain to the present day. China still lacks an independent judiciary, and so questioning a criminal charge continues to be seen as challenging the government that sets the laws, making the culprit an enemy of the state. There are allegations that members of the Falun Gong sect, including Tang Yongzhi and Zhao Rongrong, were tortured in a similar fashion to the Ling Qi. The centuries of the threat of brutal punishment can still be seen to have an impact on everyday life. Chinese people are reticent about committing themselves to a view or revealing their true opinion, as in former years it could have had tragic repercussions. China retains the death penalty by lethal injection or gunshot. Although the number executed is a state secret, organizations estimate that thousands are executed each year, more than the rest of the world put together. The crimes with this punishment can be almost anything judged to be subversive, from computer hacking to arson, as well as rape and embezzlement. We hope this video gave you an insight into the torturous world of ancient China. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the intriguing historical content we have in store for you.